Musical geniuses like Mozart and Hendrix began playing and even composing almost before they could walk. I wasn't quite so gifted. I was just a normal kid growing up in Jacksonville, Florida in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Music wasn't that much of a draw to me, not when there were sports and playing to be done. The first song I remember liking was Johnny Horton's The Battle of New Orleans, but even then it wasn't an aha moment. I just kind of liked the groove. Somewhere around my 10th birthday, though, my parents decided it was time to get me into music. They settled on piano. My cousin played it, and it seemed like the best option at the time. So they tracked down a piano teacher who offered up some sage advice. Don't buy a piano. My parents were confused. Why not buy a piano? This was an investment, right? Why throw money away on a rental when this was something that the boy could do for the rest of his life? But that piano teacher knew a thing or two. She'd seen parents with visions of their children playing standing room only recitals while all along the children had different ideas. If the child is interested in the piano, the teacher said, there's always time to buy the piano. But if the child isn't interested in the piano, you're stuck with a very expensive piece of firewood. So what are our options, my parents asked. The piano teacher gave an answer that makes me cringe to this day. You can rent an accordion from me. So there it was. Technically, the first instrument that I ever learned to play was an accordion with that droning, bleeding tone. The lessons I took largely consisted of scales and exercises running do, re, mi up and down the accordion's keyboard. I did well enough at it, I suppose, but my heart wasn't in it. I was 10 years old and trying to play an instrument that's not exactly the most glamorous or easy to play. What made matters worse, from a teaching perspective, was that I discovered I could play songs by ear. I'd be sitting at home watching cartoons and I'd start to pick the theme songs out on the accordion. I could listen to, say, the theme from Popeye and play Popeye the Sailor Man, and only a little bit of trial and error was necessary. This was a revelation to me, and one that anyone who has been involved in any kind of creative endeavor, be it designing websites or devising sales techniques, can intuitively understand. There's a proper way to do things and a prescribed path. It's why everything from roads to baseball fields to sheet music has boundary lines. But the true discoveries come when you cross those lines and veer off into the unknown. Of course, if you do veer off the beaten path, be prepared for some unpleasantness when you return. Each week I'd return to practice and my teacher would ask me how I was doing with my scales. The scales are fine, I'd say, but check this out. And I'd play her the Popeye theme, and she'd tell me to knock it off and get back to serious music. Well, nothing against my poor accordion teacher, but after just a few weeks of that, I'd had enough and walked away. Even all these years later, I wonder what would have happened if I'd played piano rather than accordion. I might have followed through with my lessons and learned my scales and become something of a decent player. To this day, I wish I played more piano.